Do your presentations suck? It's a challenging headline. Welcome back to Speak and Serve. And today I have got Dominic Colenso with us. And his book, Cut Through, challenges that topic straight away, enabling you to work with your presentations if they do suck. Dominic, welcome to the show today. It's great to see you.
Hey, Chris, great to be here.
Well, we connected via the good old internet, and I know we've had lots of discussions, but just for the benefit of anybody listening and watching, Dominic has got lots of experience. In fact, he was on screen in a different persona. He was an actor starring along some of the world famous names. Let us into a little bit of your life, Dominic. What was that role?
So there's a little clue above my shoulder here. I played Virgil Tracy in the Hollywood remake of Thunderbirds back in 2004 with Sir Ben Kingsley and Bill Paxton. So I had quite a crazy little acting career for a while. But for the last 12 years, I've been working with businesses and helping them think about how they perform and how they take those skills that actors use to be more effective and more influential in their roles.
But I guess with an actor, you're always going to have a script, aren't you, in terms of the words that you need to use and the narrative and the emotion that goes with that. But speaking, it's sometimes freeform, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am a massive advocate of ditching the script when I work with business clients. As an actor, I found it incredibly difficult to learn lines. You know, you spend hours and hours trying to get everything in the exact way. And as you'll know, if you've ever tried to learn a script for anything, the moment that you say one word out of order, the whole thing sort of tends to blow up. So whilst it can be a useful starting point to organize your thoughts, I really encourage people to start to strip it away and get back to that real connection, more like an improvisational actor rather than a TV or a theatre actor working with a given script.
Well, if you're watching or listening now, I guarantee you I will unpack some techniques from Dominic soon. But Dominic, I'm going to challenge you. You've gone from being an actor to now talking to businesses about presentations and selling. Why do you do that?
So I had a really interesting experience as a director. So while I was working as an actor, I also had a kind of curiosity around directing. And what I discovered was that I was really good at unlocking a performance in other people. I think, to be honest, I was probably a better director and teacher of acting than I was an actor. I was a decent actor, but there are much more intense, incredible performers than I was. What I discovered was that toolkit was actually really applicable in the real world. How we connect with an idea, how we use our bodies, how we use our voice. And I had an opportunity very early on in my directing career to work with a business. A friend said, my team could do with some help with storytelling. You know about that stuff. And I just thought, well, why not? We'll give it a try. And it was amazing to see how quickly those ideas translated into the real world. And that just set off a whole kind of spiral of curiosity for me and some more personal development and training and understanding how to deliver those ideas. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, I have to say, you're quite adept at it. And in fact, if you go on Dominic's YouTube channel, you'll see that How to Start a Presentation Like a Pro has more than 1 million views. And we both live in the city of York, so that's almost 4 times the population of the whole city have watched your one video, Dominic. So
I'm sure it's not all of the population.
Well, not all of them, no. In fact, you'll probably be going down York City side. Hi, signature. Has it happened yet? Anybody stopped you for a signature?
Not for the YouTube channel. Bizarrely, the thing that I'm probably most recognised for is in Ireland for a chocolate bar advert that I did 20 years ago.
I can't leave that there. Tell me more.
It was a Cadbury's Morrow, which doesn't exist anywhere else outside of Ireland. I think it's called a Boost in the UK, and there was just a very silly advert where it was like slightly inappropriate, as those kind of early 2000 adverts were. And yeah, I tend to get people going, "Do I recognise you if I walk down the street in Dublin?"
And there must have been a strapline, Dominic. Come on, give us a strapline for the chocolate bar.
Well, the strapline was the word dirty said in a Dublin accent, which I won't try and repeat here.
No, I've learned that many times. Accents in your head sound great. Then when they come out, you just think, what have I done? I've just offended the whole of Ireland.
Absolutely.
It's Dublin in Ireland. It is Dublin is an island, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
nearly got
is.
my geography completely wrong there. Now, you obviously are skilled at this and you've been on stage. You have some really big audiences in front of you. And I'm sure a lot of people think, looking out, all those eyes on me, wondering what I'm going to say. How do you take yourself into a place where you're calm, centered, and ready to perform to that kind of audience, Dominic?
For me, there's a balance to be struck between calm and being energized, and I think quite often that's a tension for a lot of people, because if you go too much into the kind of meditative space, then you lose the energy that you need to bring into the audience. But if you spend the first, or the 5 minutes before you walk out jumping up and down, then you're going to kind of come out like the Easter Bunny, and it's all going to be a bit too much. So for me, there's a period of centering that I try and work with for the 5-10 minutes before I'm going out. But I'm also looking to physically get flexible and to start to increase that energy. So if I do have a bit of a backstage area, then I have been known to do a little bit of jumping up and down and shaking my body out and all of that sort of stuff before I step out on stage.
What about that little inner voice? I'm sure you've had some occasions where 10 minutes in, you're just thinking, this is not working. The faces look blank and the inner voice starts to play on you to say, yeah, Dominic, you've lost your edge. What are you going to do? How do you allow that to be suppressed and not take over?
The key for me is to put the focus back onto the audience. So whenever you're talking or thinking about yourself, whenever that inner dialogue is rife, you're not actually focusing on the important people in the room. And I think one of the massive dangers of being the center of attention is that you have a tendency to mind read. And we can't, as we can look at what someone is doing physically and have one opinion, but the complete opposite can be true. I remember when I was teaching at RADA, I was sitting there really kind of interested in what someone was doing in an exercise that I'd set them, and my kind of interested face, for those of you that are listening, is a little bit kind of screwed up and tense, and I'm kind of really pondering what they're doing. And we got to the end of the exercise, and the young woman that was doing the exercise stopped, and I said to her, "How was that?" And she said, "It was dreadful, wasn't it?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" Because I thought it was fascinating. And she said, "It was just really terrible." And I said, "Well, what makes you say that?" And she said, "Your face." And it was this massive realization for me that as a teacher and as a coach, I really needed to kind of be aware of the signals that I was sending out, but also a massive thing that she had completely misread her audience, and that wasn't necessarily her fault, but she spent too much time thinking about her audience and what they were doing, rather than thinking about how she was serving them.
Yeah, one of my favorite habits is always seek first to understand before you can be understood. And that question, I guess, from her was that she'd already prejudged that she didn't hit the audience, which was you, but actually you were contemplating in thought.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like about you, Dominic, is you are very willing to give and give and give. And in fact, I've got a copy of your first book here, Impact. Tell me, what was the inspiration for wanting to put so many words to writing?
I think I wanted to challenge myself to codify what I was teaching. So all of those elements were absolutely part of my process. But what happened through the writing of the book was that I got much clearer on how they fit together, and how I could share them more deliberately with my audience, whether that was through the medium of the words on the page or the audiobook, or when I'm working with people in a training capacity or a one-to-one coaching capacity. So really, it started for me as a desire to really challenge myself to be more rigorous about what I was doing. And then the byproduct of that has obviously been that there is now a methodology that I can work with clients.
Noticed you have a real art of creating frameworks. So the impact framework, I've obviously gone through them: intention, mindset, presence, audience, content, and technique.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the fact that actually the impact words mean something itself, but behind the curtain, there's also these 6 stages. Where did you learn to create frameworks for your technique?
I'm going to give full credit where credit's due. That's a Daniel Priestley hack. So Daniel Priestley's a fabulous entrepreneur and business coach, and I was working with Daniel around the time of thinking about that, and he's just brilliant about codifying his thinking and being able to share it simply with people. And I thought I need to do that too. So I remember sitting in it. I had an office in York on an industrial estate at the time, and I just sat in a room covered in Post-its with all of the exercises and the concepts that I was sharing, and then thinking, okay, what buckets do these fall into to make it easier and stickier for the audience? Very transparent. What I do is not rocket science, and often people will have heard similar things or had other techniques to solve the same sort of problem. But what I've tried to do is give people something that they can follow step by step, so that when they're prepping for a meeting or prepping for a presentation, they've got that kind of clear methodology to work with.
I totally agree. Daniel has got some very good techniques. But from a neural pathway perspective, why do you think frameworks land and resonate with people so well?
I think it's the simplicity. It's logic. You know, the brain craves order, and our ability to shuffle everything together and group things together is what makes it memorable. And I think speaking in front of an audience, whether that is one-to-one or whether that is in a meeting room or on a big stage, is incredibly exposing. And it sometimes feels like there isn't a safety net. And I think of the framework as a kind of scaffolding that gives you a sense of protection, that allows you to know where you are and where you're going next, but also gives you that freedom. So we talked right at the beginning about the difference between the actor with the script and the improvisational actor. If you've ever been to the Comedy Store, or you've watched something like Whose Line Is It Anyway, or any of that kind of improvisational comedy, it looks like chaos. But actually sitting underneath that is a whole set of agreements that allow people to play and experiment, but they never go too far from those agreed set of parameters. And that's what a framework gives you.
And so many people think, oh, I could never do that. But equally, Usain Bolt could probably never have imagined running as fast as he did, but because he did it over and over and over again, it became something that he could realize.
Yeah.
Of your
repetition's key. You know, you're never going to give a brilliant performance first time round. It's why actors spend 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in the rehearsal room before they go in front of a paying audience, because it would be a car crash to say, here's the script, we'll see you in the theatre next week. It would be a disaster.
Well, let's test you on that. So you're speaking at the National Sales Conference, I think, later this year.
I am.
How many times are you probably going to rehearse that keynote from start to finish, roughly?
So the keynote is 22 minutes, and I will spend at least 4 full days in rehearsal for that. And I've spent a lot of time just sitting with the ideas and the script and the concepts and the structure to bring everything together. Yeah, by the time I get there, hopefully I'll be very comfortable with bringing that narrative to life.
4 full days for 22 minutes.
Maybe I'm a bit over the top, but it would make me really nervous to do anything less.
But isn't this the point, though, in terms of people think that they're skilled or they're the leader, the CEO? Speak to the CEO that just thinks I can wing it and turn up because of who I am and I've got all the skills, the knowledge and the experience. Speak to that person about how it feels for the audience just to wing it.
I think it's really clear when someone has invested thought and time and effort and energy in their message. Now, I think it's massively unrealistic for most CEOs or salespeople to spend 4 days on a 22-minute speech. But actually, the speech I'll be giving at the National Sales Conference is a new speech. I've never given it before. So therefore, I need to test. I need to make sure that those ideas fit together. And also I hope that concept will then have a life after that. So I'll be re-delivering that message. So if we think about a sales team bringing a new product to market, then to be honest, those team members should be spending several days having conversations about what are the USPs, what are the benefits, which features do we want to highlight, how are we going to target our different audiences and segment our messaging to resonate with different types of prospects. If people just get given a kind of PDF slide deck and say, here's the new product information, go and flog it, then it's bound to be awful. So I think my message to people that have that slight aversion to rehearsal, I get told a lot, I'm much worse when I rehearse, and my instant comeback is, you obviously haven't rehearsed enough. People think that 15-20 minutes is enough, and of course at that point you're still at the stumbly mumbly horrible bit, and you need to get through that. And it's not about committing to specific language or words. It's just having that clarity in your mind of what the narrative is and the journey that you want to take the audience on.
I'm 100% with you. I have a speech competition on Saturday, and I am repeating and repeating on a morning walk, in the car this morning. It was just going over, recording it, playing it back, and you hear subtle changes of nuance of language, or something else pops up. You, I like that. And that sort of winks in, but there's no perfect script there that goes start to finish. It's just this almost moving feast of a buffet. And every now and then I pick out different parts of it to create the whole thing. From your impact framework, without telling us about the whole book, which is the one that you think, I really cannot let this podcast go without telling people about one of the elements of that framework that they should never walk past?
So it's step number one for me. It's all about intention. And most people, when they think about a message that they need to share, they'll have a general idea of, these are the key messages, or this is what I want the person to do as a result of listening to me. I think we can always get more specific about those things. And so when I think about intention, I think about three flavors. An intellectual intention, what is it that we want people to know, the information that we're trying to get across? A behavioral intention, what do we want our audience to do as a result of listening to us? But the thing that I think most people never even contemplate is the emotional intention. Want the audience to feel. What's the emotional journey that I am trying to craft with this message? And if I don't have time to think about it in nuanced detail, then at the very minimum, how do I want them to feel at the end of this conversation? Because when you get clarity on your emotional intention, it changes two things. It changes not only how you say the words, the performance, am I trying to really excite you with this message, or am I trying to reassure you with this message? But also, when you commit to it, it actually changes the words that you use. Because if I am trying to excite you about this product and service, I'm going to use very different language than if I'm trying to reassure you. So it's such a brilliant tool for unlocking a performance, but also helping you craft that narrative as well.
Where does the artistry of the words and creating the vision fall into that aspect of creating your feeling as part of your intention? How do you pick out the different visions to create the story of the narrative, Dominic?
So as an actor, I'm trying to see if it's up on this shelf. It is. So for those of you that are listening, this book is called Actions, the Actor's Thesaurus. And it's thousands and thousands of doing words, things that you can do to someone that they will feel something in return. So dissuade, excite, interrogate. What else have we got in here? Rally, restore, restrain, ridicule. And these, as an actor, were how you divided your script. And it would almost be every single word, or not every single word, but every single line. You would try and have some different emotional intention for the other person in the scene. And that was what helped you bring the words off the page. that's really unrealistic in a business context. So what I tend to recommend is sort of chunks of 5 minutes. So if I've got 5 minutes with a person, then I can probably, focus on one single emotional intention for that conversation. But if I've got 15, then I don't want to play the same note for 15 minutes because that becomes boring, literally monotonous. I can be excited all the time. If I'm excited for 15 minutes, that's just as monotonous as me not actually saying anything at all for 15 minutes. So we've got to be mindful of shifting those gears to keep that audience engagement. So what I would tend to do is, if we think of a very kind of simple beginning, middle and end structure, I would think, what's the emotional intention for the start of this conversation or this speech? And let's just pull one out of the air. Let's say it's to challenge. I've got my sales team together and they haven't hit their targets for this week, so I've got to kind of deliver that news and tell them that we're not where we need to be and that it's disappointing and whatever. But then I might want to shift gear into educate, for example. But the great news is we've got a really strong pipeline and we've just committed to a license or a really useful piece of CRM plugin that's going to help you record your calls even quicker and get those next actions out. And then I might want to leave them feeling motivated, for example. So I'm going to shift into, but do you know what, guys? I absolutely believe over the next 7 days that if we really think about what we're trying to do, we commit to those next actions, we use the new software that we've got, that we can go out there, we can not only hit target, but we can exceed target and make up for what happened last week. And, without, I'm talking nonsense right now, but you can see that the words start to flow when you commit to the emotional intention.
Completely. And also, for anybody listening, what I'm also seeing is Dominic is bringing in really intentional body language and movements to express how he's feeling. And
that's not, just to clarify on that, Chris, that's not acting. Right. And I think this is really important.
I was just kind of go on that. So there's going to be a few people that kind of standing back now going, oh, yeah, but, he's Virgil. He was born with a different skill set when he came out into this world. It's easy for Dominic. Talk to the person that's cynically skeptical about that. I'm just not born like that.
My one word answer is rubbish. Right. So if you think about it, we bring different versions of ourselves to different situations. So to that particular listener, I would say, are you always the same in every single interaction that you have? Are you the same with your family round the dinner table as you are with your friends in a cafe or a bar, as you are with your mates on the football terrace? I meet people that say I'm a terrible introvert and I really find it very difficult to really express myself, and then you see them celebrating their favorite team scoring a goal and they're jumping up and down and they're hugging the person next to them. So we all have this range, and what you're seeing when we express ourselves is actually an unconscious connection to that emotional intention. We might have the family round the dinner table to mark a particular event, and we want people to feel one way. And when we messing around with mates on the football pitch, we want people to feel a different way. So we have that ability innately. We just need to notice it. And then we need to give ourselves permission to play more notes on that metaphorical keyboard.
Completely agree. I'm going to put an image now of your new book, which is called Cut Through. First of all, Dominic, how are you feeling right now? Because you're about 6 weeks away from launch date, and I'm going to launch into your emotional pain or priority pleasures, whatever it be. How are you feeling right now about pre-launch?
So it's quite an emotional roller coaster. And I think obviously I'm a father rather than a mother, but I hear that, and I only have one child, but I hear that when you have your second child, you tend to have forgotten what it was like to have the first. And it feels quite similar to that. So I don't remember the kind of roller coaster from launching Impact, but I'm certainly on that right now. I'm incredibly proud of how everything's come together. The book is currently with the printers, and the proofs and everything look great. So I'm really happy with the finished product. But it's one of those things where you're kind of walking to the horizon, and the horizon is moving. So you're thinking, okay, so well, I've done that. Fantastic. I can relax. Oh no, I can't. I need to create the additional resources that are going to be hosted on the website, or I want to come out on podcasts like this and talk about what I've been up to and help more people have access to it. So there's a huge to-do list, but in the main, when I really allow myself to kind of reconnect with that, it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be able to, bring this into the world.
Well, it's definitely on my list of your pre-orders. The question is, Dominic, why write another one? Because the first one probably was a labor of love, and you talked about the emotional roller coaster. Why did you want to strap yourself back in again and do it all again?
So I think I get bored, right? Let's be honest. So like there's part of me that goes, I just want a new challenge. But also I've been looking around at the people that I've been working with, and like I'm fully committed to the impact methodology. And actually, if you read the introduction of Cut Through, you'll see me make reference to it, and the fact that everything in Cut Through is underpinned by those 6 ingredients. So you don't have to have read Impact to read Cut Through, but everything is there. And if you have read Impact, you're not going to read it and go, oh my gosh, he's completely changed his mind. This is complete nonsense. But what I have noticed, to that framework point that we were talking about earlier, is that for me, it was really obvious how the impact ingredients came together to help you create a pitch or a presentation. But for the people that I was working with, they wanted me to point more specifically to exactly how to do it. And as you will have experienced, there are so many dull presentations and pitches out there, and life's too short. And we are also in this world of AI, and people think that they can just ask ChatGPT to create their narrative for them. And unfortunately, that's just not right. Like you can use those fantastic tools to help you do the research, to structure your thinking. But ultimately, when you get up to speak, your audience want you, not some bot version of you. So Cut Through is there as a guide, as a playbook to help you really specifically look at that challenge of pitches and presentations, whereas Impact is a much wider toolkit for how to communicate and influence others.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of businesses started recently which advocate we can make you look amazing from a photo if you don't like public speaking. And I'm thinking, well, how's that going to go when they meet you and they actually see the person that is different to the person that they've been consuming through video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't, I think the danger with the whole kind of AI thing is that it's going to look so, it's going to be so polished, and there won't be a single and I won't ever stumble over what I'm going to say, and it will have exactly the right time for the introduction, the middle and the end. And that's just not how life works. And I think audiences will get very bored of that very quickly. It's kind of, it's a sugar hit. It's not satisfying.
Your answer to your why write another one, I did like, but actually I'm sure that you've now got a gift to retribution. When you see a presentation that really is a diatribe of awfulness, you can just surreptitiously leave a little copy of the book and just say, we should
book
talk.
Drop. Yeah.
Because you must have sat through some really painful presentations in your time and just thought, wow, this is my moment of my life I'll never get back.
I think sometimes, and I would never deign to name names, but I have spoken at conferences where I've thought, do you know what, this is actually for me a real gift, because the last 40 minutes have been so boring that I could pretty much just kind of get up there and forget half of what I was going to say, and I'd still have the audience in the palm of my hand. So it's not always a bad thing, but yeah, there is a lot of misguided, well-intentioned noise. So it's not that people want to be bad. No one wants to give a boring presentation, but often people are looking in the wrong direction. And I think a massive challenge for many people is that you become a sort of subject matter expert and you know your topic inside out and back to front. And then someone asks you to talk about that and you just don't know how to take a step back and say, what does this audience need to know? And instead, what most people try and do is, I've been given 15 minutes. I'm going to cram 7 years of thinking into that 15-minute session and just hope that one thing sticks. And of course, it doesn't. People just zone out, and we've all got distractions all around us, especially in a conference environment. People are on their phones chatting to the person next to them, and you've lost your audience. So being able to take that step back, see the big picture, and really think about what specifically you want to communicate to this audience is really powerful.
Well, from your book that's coming out and ready for Christmas, by the way, if anybody's thinking about the Christmas list, without giving away all the gold,
Yeah.
what's one particular element that you think you could share with us now that they'll find in the book?
So I think probably the biggest win for people is just to see the framework. So I talk about 6 Ds and essentially 6 steps to follow. The first step is discover. And I think all too often people go to the detail. They open up the PowerPoint and they get the last presentation that they give and they start to try and, tweak the slides or whatever it might be. And there's something really powerful about stepping back and looking at the big picture, understanding what the exam question is, what you're trying to answer for your audience, what some of the stardust, the interesting case studies and facts and figures and metaphors are that you might be able to use. And to go back to that kind of post-it phase where we just go, right, let's just get everything out of my head and onto some sort of surface before I commit to anything. So once you've been through that discover piece, then you can start to distill. That's the next step. How do I bring this down? And that's where, what you want your audience to know, feel, and do is going to be really important, where starting to make some sort of decisions about what the key messages are is going to be vital. But we're still at that thinking place. We're not committing to actually crafting the narrative, the script, the slides. That comes when we move to step 3, which is design. So now I've got my real clarity around what the big messages are. Then I can start to put a narrative arc on this. Now I can start to think about the stories that I can tell, the beginning, the middle, and the end, the sort of structure, and think about whether I'm going to use slides or whether I might use props. And we can start to really bring everything together in a form that is almost ready to be given to an audience. Step 4 is drill. That's all about rehearsal, and that's being open to stuff changing as you rehearse. So the first thing that you deliver in terms of a run through is not going to be the thing that final audience end up seeing. Then we get into deliver, which is the mechanics of how do I actually deliver a great presentation, whether that's down the lens or whether that's face to face. And then finally, and I think this is a step that many people skip, we've got to debrief. We've actually got to go, what do we learn from this? How can I take this forward? What do I want to, keep in my back pocket for next time? And we find that we're actually in a circle, we're in a cycle. And that's the kind of journey that I take people on through the book.
Really like the connected dots between the 2 books, in that the audience and the feeling that you're trying to create before you even start the deck. It's who is this for and what do they want to get from it? That seemed to be a very clear thread between both books, Dominic. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's vital. It's never about you. It is all about them. And every different audience that you find yourself in front of should be receiving a tailored message. That's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater necessarily for anyone that's in sales listening. But if you're delivering verbatim the same sales pitch to every single audience that you meet, then you're leaving money on the table because you're not actually putting the audience at the heart of the presentation.
And it also, I'm sure we've all seen people that they're just regurgitating and it almost becomes stale because it is stale.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like you see it sometimes in the theatre at the end of a kind of 1 year run. You go and you just get the sense that the actors are slightly phoning the performance in. They've said it so many times, and that in my previous world was therefore the job of the resident director to be there giving the team notes and saying, hey guys, just kind of noticing this, can we keep this fresh, can we do something new? And in this new world that I work in, I see that as the role of the sales director or the MD or whoever's working with the team to deliver their message. So that internal coaching piece is really important.
From an outside world looking in, Dominic, I see you as very intentional and very consistent. You have your 3-minute spotlight on a Sunday. You have your rhythm on your YouTube. How do you keep that consistent habit? What would be your recommendation to somebody to set up each day with great habitual intention?
I think it's about, for me, processes, which sounds really dull, but actually what we try to do is take some of the repetitive thinking and questioning out. And it's not perfect. I hate the idea of the kind of the guru that's got everything sorted. It's much more like the swan, paddling madly underneath the river. But I do try and bookmark my days or bookend my days. Personally have a mindfulness meditation practice that starts my morning. I've been consistent with that for over 365 days now, so that's a real thing for me, that every day starts in that way. But I've been doing a version of that for 3 or 4, maybe even longer years. Then it's about really trying to stay focused on big tasks. So I try to chunk decent blocks of time in my diary. I'm at my absolute worst when I'm flitting from, one thing for 15 minutes to the next thing, to checking my emails, and it happens for sure. But being able to invest, what Cal Newport would call deep work, is really important to me. And I find, especially in preparation for training sessions, for speaking engagements, you don't block decent chunks out of time in the calendar, then I'm much, much less effective.
So 2 books, it's like saying to the person that's just finished the Ironman, what's next? But Dominic, 2026, what is next for you? And I think you have done an Ironman. I'm reading somewhere that you've done some pretty big epic endurance events.
Not endurance. Right? No. I've run a marathon, but I haven't got to the Ironman stage.
Okay, so
I don't think I will.
Cut through and you've had a pause for breath. What's next for 2026, Dominic?
My big focus for 2026 is going to be my YouTube channel. So that's that for me. I'm having a lot of fun creating that content. It's great to get it out to a wider audience and to be able to share those messages for free. How amazing that not just my content, but that you can connect with any flavor of content you want and learn any skill that you want just by going to a website and watching some videos. So I'm really excited about doing more with that. And I'm also excited about having a little bit more time off.
Yeah, I've read some of your 3-minute spotlights and I can see how much you enjoy the decoupling of life from technology and the need to always be on. Where would be your favorite place just for a family walk on a Sunday? Anywhere in the world.
There is a beautiful place just outside of York, a place called Bylands Abbey and West Bank, and just to get up there into the countryside, out into the forest, come rain or shine, because you've got a little bit of kind of weather cover, is probably one of my favorite places in the world.
Well, it's going to finish the podcast now then with the 3 habits. But before I do that, Dominic, is there anything that I should have asked you that other listeners will think, you didn't ask him about that? Anything, Dominic, I've left on the table that you'd like me to pick your brains on?
Anything that you've left on the table? No, I don't think so, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, we've been chatting for 45 minutes now and it's flown by.
It has.
So no, but if anyone does have questions, then obviously that would be a great opportunity for me to come back and answer them. So let's do it again.
Well, there is a comments button down here, and your YouTube channel is I guess it's Dominic Colenso, is it?
Dominic Colenso, at Dominic Colenso. You'll find all the videos there. Yeah.
All right, and I'll put all that in the show notes, as well as your book, Was it all authors or actors something? The book that you recommended,
This
I'll put that in as well.
Actions, the Actors Thesaurus.
Yeah. And obviously, I'll mention the impact and your website. It'll all be in the show notes. Anybody wants it if they've missed it. Dominic, your three fundamentals. I ask everybody the same question, and it's curious as to how many different answers, and some of them will all have the same thread. What would be your three takeaways for somebody wanting to live a long, happy, healthy life, Dominic?
It was a really interesting question to think about. The first thing that jumps to mind is to have someone you can talk to. A relationship, whether that is your life partner, romantic partner, or someone else, that you can have an honest conversation with about how you're feeling, about how things are going. We live in a very kind of public world, I think, where we are encouraged to put out the kind of Instagram veneer on everything and show how wonderful it all is. But for me, Laura, my wife, is my absolute partner in everything that we do. She's a sounding board. She puts up with me. She challenges me. I couldn't do what I do without that. So that's number one. Number two is much more functional. Is move, especially as I'm getting older. I'm really discovering how important that is. Spending a lot of time sitting at a desk writing the book was like literally painful, and so to get up, to get out, whatever your flavor is, whether it's going for a run, whether it's doing a bit of yoga, whether it's just walking down the street, but something that gets the body moving, because the mind and the body are absolutely linked. And the more open, relaxed, expansive you are, the more confident and grounded that you feel. And then the final piece is something that I've been really exploring much more recently, and that is that you are never more than one thought away from happiness. We can really tie ourselves up in knots, and I do this all the time. Oh my God, that was a disaster. I can't believe how that went. But actually sitting somewhere, within arm's reach is this place of calm, of joy, of peace. And without getting too kind of woo-woo here, I think it's easy to forget that we're making a lot of this stuff up. And if you can stop, breathe, and find something in your life that you are grateful for, that is, that brings you joy, then it's one thought to reconnect to that.
Three great takeaways. If they haven't got a significant other, well, your first one in terms of talk to, and you're feeling bereft of connected relationships because perhaps you're in a new place or you're in a new environment, with somebody with wisdom of life, where would you recommend they could go to ask for connection to people?
I mean, I think it's about finding a tribe, whatever, in whatever flavor that might be. And we don't have to expect to have deep and meaningful conversations immediately, but if you play a sport, or are interested in a sport, go and join a sports club. If you prefer knitting, then find other people that knit. But also, I think in this hyper-connected world, one of the benefits is that actually there are groups that you can join and people that you can see. I think there's a real benefit of physically being in the same space as someone. There's a different depth that comes there. But if that isn't possible, then find your tribe online as well. And the more you share, the more others will share with you.
Without breaking confidentiality, we've had some very interesting chats together as a group of men in a closed group, talking about some very, very deep stuff. And I know that it served me, and I know it served you well, and I fully advocate that. I'm so glad you didn't say open up ChatGPT and have a conversation to AI.
No, human first.
Good. Brilliant. What a way to finish. Talk to people that matter to you. Move, perhaps maybe move and talk at the same time, and then have some happiness, because you're only one thought away from happiness. Dominic Colenso, it's been an absolute joy today. I wish you so much luck with your book. But finishing it, it's, as you say, it's like your second child. I know that you've poured blood, sweat, and tears into it, and I think it will be an unmitigated success. Thank you so
Thank you,
much for your time
Chris.
today.
Thanks for having me.